Some people think the hardest part of any story is the wound. They are wrong. The hardest part is the quiet that comes after, when the bleeding stops and you have to decide what kind of person you are going to be now. Elena Jenkins had been in that quiet for 8 weeks. Hartfield in early summer was soft and salt-smelling, and the blue margin opened every morning at 7, and Rosa sat in the window seat with her tea, and Gerald fixed things that didn't need fixing, and Tobias called every other evening. It was a good life. Elena knew this and was grateful for it, and checked the door every time the bell rang. She told herself each morning, clearly, that she was not waiting for anyone. She was not waiting. But on a Wednesday in June, a package arrived with no sender name. She opened it at the counter with Rosa watching. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a necklace, a small gold chain with a pearl at the center, identical to the one she had pawned in the cold months before. Elena held it for a long time. Rosa said nothing. The bell above the door was silent. Gerald was the one who told her. He mentioned it sideways, while pretending to focus on something else. He was recalking the window frame on a Tuesday morning and said, without turning around, that a man had moved into the rented flat on Cornish Lane 3 weeks ago. Runs every morning past the café, Gerald said. Never comes in. Elena kept wiping the counter. She asked what the man looked like. Gerald described him accurately and without editorializing, which was its own kind of editorial. Elena set down the cloth and looked out at the gray morning street. She thought about the things she had told herself in 8 weeks, that she was fine, that the bracelet on the wall was a reminder, not a shrine, that keeping the necklace in her apron pocket was simply convenient. She thought about all of that for approximately 10 seconds. Then she said to Gerald, "Does he look well?" Gerald considered this seriously with his back still turned. "He looks like a man who is trying," he said. He went back to the window frame. Elena went back to the coffee machine. Neither of them said anything else, which was its own kind of conversation. He came in on a Friday. No announcement, no drama. The bell rang at 8:30, and Adrian walked through the door in a plain gray coat. Elena was behind the counter. Their eyes met the way eyes meet when two people have been expecting something and are still surprised by it. He sat at the small table by the window. Elena came over. She asked what he wanted. He said a flat white, please. She made it. She brought it to the table, and he thanked her, and she said, "You're welcome." And for a moment, they were simply two people in a cafe. Then he asked quietly if she had received the necklace. She said she had. He waited. She sat down across from him. There were no other customers, and Gerald was in the back organizing stock that was already organized. They talked about small things. Rosa's progress. A novel Elena had just finished. The weather. It was the most ordinary conversation she had ever had with him, and also the most careful. Finally, she said, "I haven't decided yet what it means." Adrian looked at his coffee. He nodded once, slowly, as if that was a fair and honest answer, which it was. She thought about it for 3 more days. She thought while opening the cafe and closing it, while helping Tobias with enrollment forms, while sitting with Rosa watching the light change on the water. She thought about what it would mean to begin again with someone who had hurt her, not from cruelty but from fear, which was almost harder to forgive because fear made sense. On the 4th day, she wrote something on a piece of paper. She folded it and put it in her apron pocket alongside the necklace. And the next morning when Adrian came in for his flat white, she set the paper on the table. He opened it. He read the address written there. He looked up. She said, "That is a community clinic in the Caldwell district. Free care for people who cannot pay. They need hands, not money." Adrian was still. 60 days, Elena said. Every day. No team, no press, no announcement. You go as a person, not a billionaire. You do whatever they ask you to do. She looked at him. "If you do that, I will know something true about you that no test could ever have told me." Adrian folded the paper and put it in his pocket. He said, "All right." The clinic director was a small, precise woman named Dr. Priya Anand, who had kept a failing building alive for 15 years through stubbornness and grant applications. She looked at Adrian for a long moment when he appeared in plain clothes on a Monday morning. She did not ask who he was. She picked up a mop from the supply closet, held it out, and pointed down the hallway. Adrian took it. He mopped the hallway. Then he carried boxes of donated supplies from a truck in the car park to the storage room. Then he sat in the waiting area and read picture books to a 4-year-old girl whose mother was being seen inside and who had been waiting 2 hours and was starting to cry. Her name was Mia. She liked the book about the bear who lost his hat. Adrian read it 4 times. At 6, Dr. Anand found him restacking chairs in the community room. "You can go," she said. He said he would finish the chairs first. She nodded and went back to her office. At 8:10, he walked to the bus stop in the dark. He took out his phone and typed one word to Elena's number. Done. He sent it and waited for the bus in the cold. Elena read the text at 11 that night. She was in bed with a book she had been reading the same paragraph of for 40 minutes. She looked at the word done on her screen for a long time. Then she set the phone face down on the nightstand and went to sleep. This became the rhythm of the weeks that followed. Each evening, sometimes late, sometimes earlier, a single text from Adrian. Not descriptions of what he had done, just confirmation. Done, done, done. Like a heartbeat. Elena did not reply to most of them. Occasionally she sent back one word. Good. The weeks moved. She heard things through Gerald, who heard things through the town. That the man from Cornish Lane had fixed the generator at the clinic alone at midnight. That he had argued with a city council official about underfunding and lost, and come back the next day anyway. That Dr. Anand, who trusted almost nobody, had started trusting him. Elena listened to these things and did not comment on them out loud. But she stopped checking the door quite so often. She was not certain what that meant. She suspected it meant something worth paying attention to. The story broke on a Thursday morning. Elena saw it first while the coffee was brewing. A headline. Disgraced billionaire Adrian Kane secretly volunteers at charity clinic. Is it a PR stunt? The article had photographs. Adrian carrying boxes. Adrian sitting with an elderly patient. Adrian on his knees fixing something under a sink. The photographs were clear and real and taken without his knowledge. Within hours the story had spread. Donations began arriving at the clinic in large amounts. Then the clinic's board held an emergency meeting and voted to ask Adrian to step back. Not because they doubted him, but because the media attention was compromising patient privacy. Elena read all of this at the counter. Rosa watched her from the window seat and said nothing. Tobias called and asked if she had seen the news. She said yes. He asked what she was going to do. She said she did not know yet. After the café closed that evening, Elena drove 20 minutes inland to the Caldwell district. She parked outside the clinic. The lights were still on. She went inside and asked to speak to Dr. Priya Anand. The receptionist showed her in without questions. Dr. Anand's office was small and very tidy. The doctor poured 2 cups of tea and set one in front of Elena without asking. Elena asked her question directly. Was he real, or was he performing? Dr. Anand was quiet for long enough that Elena began to wonder if she would answer. Then the doctor said that in 15 years she had learned to recognize volunteers who were there for themselves, who needed to feel useful or to be seen doing good. They were not bad people, but their need was visible. Adrian did not have that quality. He paid attention to individual people in a way that was almost painful to watch. He remembered names, histories, small details. He did not perform kindness. He was simply kind, in the quiet way of someone who had recently discovered they were capable of it, and was surprised and grateful. Then the doctor paused. She said there was one other thing. That one afternoon she had walked past the supply closet, heard a sound, looked in, and found Adrian sitting on an overturned crate with his face in his hands. He did not know she had seen. Elena drove home in silence. When she arrived, Adrian was sitting on the front step of the café. He was not waiting dramatically. He sat on the step with his collar up, looking at the street, and when Elena's headlights swept across him, he raised a hand. She parked and sat in the car a moment. Then she got out and sat beside him. They were quiet for a while, listening to the water somewhere in the distance and the town settling into night. Then they talked. Not about Victor, not about the test. Elena asked about his father. Adrian talked slowly, finding words carefully, the way you do when you have not spoken about something for a long time. He talked about the first person who took something from him, and how a single early betrayal can teach you that trust is a transaction and love is a risk you can only afford by controlling the variables. He said he understood now that this was a lie, that he had been living inside it for 20 years. Elena listened. She did not comfort him. She did not say it was understandable. She just listened, which was what he needed. When he stopped talking, the street was fully dark. Elena reached into her apron pocket and placed the pearl necklace in his hand. "Keep it safe," she said. "Not forever. Just for now." Victor's fraud trial began in autumn and brought both their names back into the news. The charges were serious: insurance fraud, board record manipulation, deliberate financial sabotage. Victor's legal team was expensive and creative. Their strategy was to distribute responsibility, to suggest that Adrian had been a willing architect of Elena's suffering, and that Elena herself had leveraged the situation to gain access to Kane Technologies' resources. A motion was filed to call Elena as a hostile witness. Her lawyer told her she did not have to agree. She agreed anyway. She said that if the full truth was going to be told, it needed to be complete, including the complicated parts. The trial date was set. Adrian called her the evening before. He asked if she was all right. She said she was. He said he was sorry she had to go through this. She said she had done harder things. He was quiet a moment. Then he said, "I know. That's what makes it worse." She thought that was the most honest thing he had ever said about what he had done to her. She said goodnight and went to bed and slept better than she had expected. Victor's lawyer was a tall man named Graves who asked questions with precision and no visible emotion. He showed the court the pawn receipt. He showed the sold house. He quoted from Elena's letter and framed each piece as proof of a calculated woman positioning herself beside a dying asset. Elena sat in the witness box and answered every question. She did not elaborate. She did not perform indignation. When Graves said she stood to inherit a multi-billion-dollar company, she said she had been offered it and refused it. When he said she had chosen to stay even knowing she was being tested, she said yes. When he said, "Didn't that suggest reasons beyond love?" she was quiet for a moment. The room was very still. Then she said, "I had one reason. The same reason I gave away everything I had. The same reason I showed up to a press conference nobody asked me to attend. The same reason I am sitting here now." Graves waited. Elena looked at him calmly. "I believed in him," she said. "Not in his money. In him. You can call that foolish. But it is not a crime." The room was silent for 3 full seconds. The judge asked if he had further questions. He said no. The night before the verdict, Adrian came to the café after closing. Elena had been expecting him, not because she had planned it, but because she had noticed she could predict him now. He knocked, even though the door was unlocked. She let him in and made 2 coffees, and they sat at the small table by the window. The town was quiet outside. He asked what she wanted, not from the verdict, not from Victor's punishment, but from the two of them. It was the most direct question he had ever asked her about it. Elena wrapped both hands around her cup and thought about it genuinely. Then she said, "I want the 60 days to have been enough. Not to prove something to me. Enough for you. I want the man who cried in the supply closet to be the real version, not a temporary one." Adrian looked at the table. A long time passed. Then he reached into his coat and placed the pearl necklace on the table between them. He did not say anything. Elena looked at the necklace and then at him. She left it where it was. Not refusing. Not taking it yet. Just letting it sit between them like a question that did not need an answer before morning. The verdict came on a gray Tuesday. Victor was convicted on 3 counts: insurance fraud, falsification of corporate records, and criminal conspiracy. The civil suit against Adrian was dismissed entirely. The judge, a measured woman who chose her words carefully, made a statement before sentencing that was not required but that she gave anyway. She said that regardless of the legal outcome, a real person had sustained real harm, financial, professional, and psychological. She said the name clearly, Elena Jenkins. She said courts could determine guilt, but could not fully account for what was owed to someone who had given everything and asked for nothing in return. The room was very quiet. Elena sat in the gallery beside her lawyer with her hands folded in her lap. When they led Victor out, he passed within a few feet of where she sat. He did not speak. He did not sneer. He looked at her once, and something moved across his face. Not quite remorse, but somewhere close to it. Then he looked away and walked through the door and was gone. Elena released a breath she had been holding for approximately a year. Her lawyer asked if she was all right. She said, "Yes. I think that's the first time that's been true." With the trial concluded, the question of Kane Technologies could no longer be deferred. The blind trust holding Adrian's voting shares would expire in 30 days. The board needed direction. Adrian called a meeting, the first time he had walked into that boardroom since resigning. Elena was not present. The meeting was brief. Adrian presented a single proposal. The Kane Foundation would be formalized under independent directorship. The directorship would be offered to Elena Jenkins, with full authority, full legal protection, and a permanent endowment. The board voted yes in under 20 minutes. which told Adrian something about how tired everyone was of uncertainty. He called Elena that afternoon. He told her what had been decided. He said the board had voted yes, but that she had not yet agreed, and the board's yes meant nothing without hers. Elena said she needed a few days. He said of course. She asked one question before she hung up. Will your name be on anything? He said, only if you want it to be. She said she would be in touch. She was already thinking about the clinic and the fund she had been designing in her mind for weeks, and Dr. Anand's face when she described the new wing she had been imagining for 3 years. He came on a Saturday morning with the foundation documents in a plain folder. No lawyer, no assistant. He set the folder on the cafe counter and stepped back. Elena picked it up and read it. Not a skim, a real reading, page by page. It took 40 minutes. Adrian drank his flat white and did not interrupt. On the second to last page, Elena found the clause she had been looking for. The Foundation's primary research mandate included funding for Duchenne muscular dystrophy and related progressive conditions. She read it twice. Then she turned to the last page. At the bottom, below the signature line, in small, uneven handwriting that was clearly not a lawyer's, were 9 words. No strings. No test. Just the work. Elena put the folder down on the counter. She looked at Adrian. He looked back. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Elena picked up a pen from the cup beside the register. She opened the folder to the signature page. She signed her name clearly and without hesitation, the way she did everything that mattered. She closed the folder. She pushed it back across the counter. Tell the board Monday, she said. Rosa had never spoken about Adrian directly. She had watched everything from her window seat with the patience of someone who knows most things resolve themselves if you do not interfere. But the evening after Elena signed the foundation documents, Rosa asked her to sit by the window. The town was going dark outside. Rosa talked about her own marriage, about a man who had hurt her early, not from cruelty, but from his own unexamined fear, and who had spent years afterward proving quietly and without announcement that he had chosen to be different. She said forgiving someone was not the same as trusting them again, and trusting them again was not something you decided all at once. It was something you discovered, one small moment at a time, that you were already doing. Then Rosa reached out. She took Elena's right hand and turned it palm up. She reached into her own pocket. She had apparently been carrying it, had taken it from Elena's apron at some point, and placed the pearl necklace in her daughter's hand. Elena looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at her mother. Rosa squeezed her hand once and picked up her tea. Tobias asked to meet Adrian. He asked Elena directly, with the straightforward confidence of someone who had been close to death enough times to have no patience for indirectness. Elena asked why. Tobias said, because he's part of the story and I want to know what he's like. Elena could not argue with that. She arranged it for a Sunday afternoon at the café, just the 3 of them. Adrian arrived first. Tobias came in his chair, doing better than he had in years. The medication, the stable housing, the regular care had given him back something uncertainty had taken. He looked at Adrian with open assessment. Then he said, "Did you love her when you were testing her?" Adrian did not hesitate. He said yes. Tobias considered this. He asked a few more questions, practical ones, about what Adrian had actually been afraid of, about whether the fear made sense in retrospect. Adrian answered each one honestly and without softening. Finally, Tobias nodded. "You were a coward," he said, "but not a monster. Those are different things." Adrian said, "Yes." Tobias looked at Elena. "He's okay," he said. Elena said, "Thank you for the assessment." Tobias shrugged. "You asked." Elena stood alone at the podium. She had not told Adrian about the press conference, not because she was hiding it, but because it was hers. She had written the statement herself, revised it 4 times, and read it to Rosa the night before. Rosa had said it was good. The room was smaller than the courthouse had been. The journalists were mostly regional. Elena was not nervous. She had stopped being nervous in public places somewhere around the 3rd time her name had trended nationally against her will. She announced the Kane Foundation's inaugural initiative, free specialist care and home support for families caring for children with progressive illness. Fully funded. No means testing. Available nationally within 18 months. She named it clearly, without drama, the Rosa and Tobias Fund. In the gallery, Rosa sat very straight and did not cry, which was how Elena knew she was trying not to. Tobias, watching on his phone from his room, sent a text that said only, After the conference, 3 journalists asked about Adrian. Elena said the foundation operated independently and she was not there to discuss anyone other than the families it was designed to serve. Then she collected her notes, walked to her car, and called Dr. Anand. The clinic's new wing could begin planning. 60 days ended on a Wednesday. Adrian did not come to the café. He did not send a text. He gave her the silence she had not asked for, but that he understood she needed, space to decide what 60 days had actually meant without his presence pressing on the decision. Elena appreciated this more than she could have said. A week passed, then another. She ran the foundation from the back office of the café, which was not ideal but was working. She talked to Dr. Anand twice a week. She hired a small team. She read grant applications with the same careful attention she had once given to defending a man online. The work was real and she was good at it. She was also aware, in the way you are aware of something you are deliberately not looking at directly, that she had started checking the door again. Not anxiously, differently. The way you check for something you want to see rather than something you are bracing for. On the 15th evening after the 60 days ended, she picked up her phone. She typed, "Come for coffee." She deleted it. She typed it again. She sat with it for a long time. The cafe was quiet. She pressed send. The message arrived at 7:43 in the evening. Adrian was on the train back from a foundation board meeting. He had attended as a non-executive advisor, sitting at the far end of the table, answering questions when invited and offering no opinions otherwise. He was learning this was harder than running the room and also better for him. He read the 3 words and looked out the window at the dark fields. He did not reply immediately. He sat with it for a while, the way you sit with something good when you have learned not to grab at good things. He finished the journey. He went home. He made dinner, which he had been learning to do because Gerald had pointed out that the cafe was not a meal plan. He slept. The next morning, he packed a small bag. Hartfield was close enough for a day trip, but he wanted the option of staying. He walked to the station in the early gray light. He bought a return ticket, then changed his mind and bought a single. On the platform, when the train arrived and the doors opened and the morning air smelled of rain, he smiled. Unguarded, a little surprised, for the first time in longer than he could easily remember. She made the coffee herself. Not because she needed to, Gerald was there and capable, but because it was something she wanted to do with her own hands. She had been practicing the flat white for 3 weeks without admitting to anyone why. Adrian came in at 10:30, rain-damp, carrying a small bag she noticed, but did not comment on. He sat at the table by the window. Rosa was in her usual seat. Gerald was at the counter doing something unnecessary. The cafe smelled of coffee and sea. Elena brought the flat white to the table and sat across from him. He said thank you. She said you're welcome. They were quiet for a moment with the rain going softly against the glass. Then Elena said, "I read your note again. No strings, no test." Adrian nodded. She looked at him, not studying, not checking, just looking. He looked back. She said, "I believe you." 3 words. Said without ceremony, without the weight of everything it had taken to get there pressing them flat. Just true. Adrian was very still. Elena picked up her own coffee. Outside, the rain continued. Rosa turned a page. Gerald dropped something. The cafe was warm and entirely ordinary, and Elena thought, yes. This. Exactly this. She reached into her apron pocket. She had carried the necklace so long its weight felt ordinary, the way worry becomes ordinary when you carry it long enough. She set it on the table. She said, "I want you to put it on me." Adrian's hands were steady until they weren't. She turned in her chair and lifted her hair. She felt his fingers at the back of her neck, careful and slow, then the slight pause as he worked the clasp, then the small, cool weight of the pearl at her collarbone. She turned back. She looked down at it, and then at him. He was watching her with an expression she had not seen before, open in a way that had nothing to do with money or power. Just a man at a small table in a coastal cafe who had done a very hard thing and was sitting with what it had given him. Elena said, "My father would have thought this ridiculous." Adrian waited. "He would have liked you anyway," she said. "Eventually. After he'd made you nervous for a while." Adrian laughed, unguarded, slightly undignified. The laugh of someone careful so long that real laughter felt strange and good. Rosa lifted her book a little higher. She was smiling behind it. He told her at the end of that week. He said he was relocating to Hartfield permanently. Not temporarily, not experimentally, permanently. He had given notice on the city flat. He had spoken to the building owner on Cornish Lane about a longer lease. He would continue on the foundation board as a non-executive advisor. The city 2 days a month and otherwise here. Elena asked what here meant, exactly, for a man who had spent his adult life defined by his work. He said he was not entirely sure yet, which she thought was the most honest answer he could have given. He said he was learning to cook. He said he wanted to understand what it meant to be in a place rather than passing through it. Elena looked at him a moment. She said the flat above the cafe was available. The previous tenant had left in March. He could speak to Gerald about the rate. Adrian said he would do that. He did. Gerald charged him full market rate without negotiation, which Adrian paid without complaint, and which Gerald reported to Elena with visible satisfaction. Elena said nothing, but later, in the back office, she laughed until her eyes watered. A year passed. It passed the way good years pass. Not quickly, but fully, each part of it used. The Rosa and Tobias Fund had helped 43 families in its first year. Tobias had enrolled in an online biomedical science course, which Dr. Anand said was an excellent choice. Rosa's health held steady. She attended the Thursday reading group at the cafe, which she claimed was for the company and which was also clearly for the books. Dr. Anand's clinic broke ground on its new wing in September. The funding source was listed as anonymous in all public documents, though everyone involved knew, and nobody said so, because that was the agreement. Adrian stocked the pay-it-forward shelf every Monday morning before the cafe opened. Elena had noticed in November and said nothing. He had said nothing. It was simply something that happened on Monday mornings, like the light on the water and Gerald arguing with the coffee machine. A journalist asked Elena, at the end of a long interview, whether she trusted him now. Elena thought about it honestly. Then she said, "I'm learning to. That's not the same as yes. But it's not the same as no." The journalist wrote that down. Elena thought it was the truest sentence she had spoken all year. Late autumn morning. Light came in low and golden through the cafe windows, the kind of October light that makes everything look briefly precious before winter. Rosa was in her window seat with a novel and a cold cup of tea. Tobias was on video from university, laughing and holding up his phone so Elena could see something. Gerald was arguing with the espresso machine in a way that sounded adversarial but was probably affectionate. Elena was behind the counter doing the morning accounts. She heard the flat door above the cafe open and close, then footsteps on the back stairs. Then Adrian came through the kitchen door carrying 2 cups. He had been learning to make coffee under Gerald's reluctant instruction and was almost good at it. He set 1 cup in front of Elena. She picked it up without looking, the way you reach for something you know will be in the right place, and took a sip. It was right. The temperature, the ratio, everything. She looked up at him. He raised his cup slightly, a quiet acknowledgement. She did the same. On the wall above the counter, framed side by side in glass, the silver bracelet and the pearl necklace. 2 stories. One ending. Outside, the sea was calm. The October light held. I'm so glad you have watched this story till the end. Please support by hitting the subscribe button and turning on the notification bell. Drop you comments and tell me where you are watching from. See you soon in another interesting story.